Today I want to share with you a canned tuna recipe called Tuna Boat Surprise. This is a vintage school lunch favorite, but it is enjoyed by young and old alike. Hi sweet friends, I'm Mary and welcome to Mary's Nest, where I teach traditional cooking skills for making nutrient-dense foods like bone broth, ferment, sourdough, and more. So if you enjoy learning about those things, consider subscribing to my channel and don't forget to click on the little notification bell below. That'll let you know every time I upload a new video. Well, this is a great recipe to have in your repertoire because it makes use often of ingredients that you have in your working pantry or your extended pantry, which is your food storage. This particular recipe takes advantage of using canned tuna fish. But don't worry if you don't like tuna fish. This is a very flexible recipe, as you're going to see. And if you want, you can use canned salmon. You could also use canned chicken. And if you want, you can even use up some chopped chicken or chopped meat that you have left over from a previous meal. And you can even make this completely vegetarian if you want by just increasing the amount of vegetables that you add. And if you don't take dairy, you can replace the dairy in this recipe with a vegetable broth. So as you're going to see, once you learn the main or the basic recipe, you've got a lot of options open to you to take advantage of what you might have in your fridge or your freezer, as well as what you have in your pantry and your working pantry and your extended pantry. Well, let's go over the ingredients, but don't worry, you don't need to write anything down in the description below. Just open up the description and look for the word recipe, and there'll be a link there. That'll take you over to my website, marysnest.com, and it'll take you right to this direct recipe where you can read it online or print it out. The first thing that you're going to need is some type of sandwich bread. Now, if you've been with me in earlier videos where we made homemade sandwich bread, you can definitely use your homemade sandwich bread. And you can use the white sandwich bread version or the whole wheat sandwich bread version. But if you want to just buy sandwich bread at the grocery store, you can certainly use that too. And then next you're going to need some butter, just some softened butter that we'll be using to put on the bread. It's really not a measurement, it's just as much as you're going to need for 8 slices of bread. The rest of the ingredients are what go into making the mixture that go into our boats. And for that, you're going to need 4 tablespoons of butter. This is just an unsalted butter. If you have a salted butter, you can use that as well. You'll just wind up omitting the salt. Then you're going to need 4 tablespoons of an all-purpose flour. And then what I've got here is 1 small onion diced up. Now, if you don't like onion, you can leave it out. That's what's so flexible about this recipe. You can really mix and match with whatever ingredients you want. If you like garlic, you can add some garlic into it. But I really like it with 1 small chopped onion. Next, you're going to need 2 cups of liquid. Now, I'm using 2 cups of whole milk. If you want, you can use 2% milk, or you can even use skim milk or fat-free milk. Now, if you don't want to use any dairy, you can definitely use some sort of broth instead. If you decide to use broth, I recommend using a chicken broth, even with canned tuna. Fish broth can have a little too much of an overpowering flavor for this particular recipe. So go with a mild chicken broth, or if you have a mild chicken bone broth, any of that will work fine. And as I said, if you're going to omit the tuna and just up the veggies, you can definitely use a vegetable broth. And even if you're using the tuna, or the canned tuna or a canned salmon or a canned chicken, you can use a vegetable broth here as well. Next, you want 2 cups of vegetables. Basically what I've got here are peas and carrots. They can be fresh, they can be frozen, they can be canned, they can be other vegetables that you have in your crisper that may be getting a little past their prime and you just want to chop those up and use them. Just in the case of any vegetable that may be firm, like a carrot, I recommend cooking it a little bit before putting it into this recipe. Basically, you can really use anything here. You can also use corn, you could use celery, you could use some chopped greens that you just chopped up real finely, chopped spinach. Anything will work, and you're just going to need about 2 cups. A little more, a little less, it doesn't matter. It's very forgiving. This is a very flexible recipe. Finally, we've got the star of the show. In our case, it's going to be canned tuna. And these are, you're going to need 2 cans, and these are 5 ounces each. Now, if your can of tuna is a little more or a little less, don't worry about it. The same with your salmon and your canned chicken, whatever canned meat you're using. It's really, as I said, with the veggies and basically with everything, it's very forgiving. It's very flexible. So, but in this case, we're going to use the 2 cans of tuna, and this is going to make enough to feed 4, assuming you give 2 boats, 2 tuna boats to each person. Now, what you're going to do with your sandwich bread is remove the crusts. Now, don't throw the crusts out. Save the crusts, because just add this to your scrap bag of stale breads and whatnot that you use to make breadcrumbs. But this is a lot easier to do if you remove the crust. Now, as you remove your crusts, don't worry if you're working with a homemade bread and it has a nice crown to it like this. That's fine. You have some options. If you want, you can slice it right even across the top like that, and then just add that to your scrap bag. That's a good piece to use to make croutons. Or if you want, you can do, you know, what I do. I just kind of go around best I can and just take off the top crust, even though the bread looks like this in the end, kind of cut a little funny on top. We're going to be rolling this out, so it's not going to really matter. Next, you want to get some kind of rolling pin. If you don't have a rolling pin, don't worry. You can use, you know, like a jar or a glass, anything that can help you flatten this out. And that's what we're going to do next. We're just going to flatten our bread out just by putting some pressure on it and rolling it till it's nice and flat and thin. So after you roll this out with your rolling pin or whatever you're using, you just want to get it nice and flattened out. And I'll pick it up and I'll show you exactly how this is going to look. See, it's very, very, very thin, very, very flattened out. Next, you want to take a little bit of softened butter and you want to butter both sides of your bread. And you just want to cover this completely, but with a very, very thin coating. Then you're just going to turn it over. You can do it on a plate or on a board like I do. Just take another little tiny bit and then just do the same thing. Spread it out as thin as possible, right to the edges, and make it a very thin coat. Next, after you have both sides well buttered, you're going to fold your bread, just nipping the ends together. And I'm going to take a close-up of this so you can see exactly what I'm doing and how I'm getting these ends squeezed together. And after you squeeze these little sides together, you're going to have your little boat. Now, don't worry as you're doing this, especially if you're using your homemade sandwich bread, if things start to crack a little or whatnot, just squeeze it together with your hand, and that's got the butter on it, and everything's going to be fine. I don't want you to worry. If you are using the store-bought sandwich bread, it's real squishy, and so it's going to stay together and bend very easily. But if you are using the homemade sandwich bread, you might get a few little cracks and all, but it's okay. It's going to be fine. Now, what you may want to do is take a toothpick, and I highly recommend this if it's a store-bought sandwich bread, you probably don't need this, but I like to, just as my insurance policy, put a toothpick through here to hold these together, just so they don't fall apart. Because what we're going to do next is we're going to put these on a baking sheet. I'll finish all of these up, and we're going to bake them in the oven at 350 degrees for about 10 minutes, and that's 350 degrees Fahrenheit. And having this little toothpick helps them stay together as they're baking. Now, I've got my baking sheet here. It's just lined with parchment paper, and I'm going to go ahead and put my little boat down on it. You can put it right on your baking sheet if you want. I like to put them on parchment paper, especially since they are a little greasy. This helps keep things clean, but you can do whatever you want. Well, I'm going to finish up turning all of these bread slices into little boats, and then we'll move on to making the filling. But I have to share with you, when I was a little girl in school, and this is back in the 1960s, the cafeteria had a very structured plan. and there was, you know, a particular food that was served on Monday, Tuesday. On Wednesday, we always had liver and onions. And I think that's why we all had good eyesight, because it's very high in vitamin A. It's good for the eyes. Every Wednesday was liver and onions. And every Friday was fish. And it could be different things. It could be like little fish stews and little fish casseroles. I think some of my sweet friends from across the pond over in England have told me that you call those little fish casseroles nursery food, which I think is very cute. And we were definitely very young, as I'm talking first, second, third, grade. But we so looked forward to Tuna Boat Surprise. And really, I think that, I don't know how this was invented or if you had this at your school as well, but the lunch ladies were just so ingenious, because they would take tuna fish and make this sauce that we're going to make and just add in, I think, all the leftover vegetables from the week, whether it was string beans or carrots or peas or corn, it didn't matter. But as kids, we loved it, just the name. Tuna Boat Surprise, and they would put the little boat on our plate and pour the filling on, and we just thought that was the best. But the funny thing is, it was really delicious, and not only did we enjoy it, when Tuna Boat Surprise came around on the menu, the teachers always took it too, and that's why I say this is loved by young and old alike. Well, I've got my boats all made, and now I'm going to go pop these into the oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for about 10 minutes. Basically, we just want them to toast up. And I just want to say one thing. If you find it a little overwhelming making these little boats, don't worry about it. This filling is delicious just over toasted bread or over a couple of biscuits. It's really wonderful, and I think you'll enjoy it. So even if you're not up to making the little boats, but they're very easy to do actually, you do have options. Well, while our boats are baking in the oven, I just wanted to let you know that I opened the 2 cans of tuna fish and let it drain. I'm using chunk light tuna, which is the tuna fish that's on the more reasonable side in terms of price, but you can definitely use the albacore if you prefer that. Now I've got my 4 tablespoons of butter melting here on the stovetop, and I'm going to go ahead and add in my 1 chopped onion. Now, we don't want to brown the onion, we just want it to soften. So just saute the onions for 2-3 minutes, just until they get soft and translucent looking. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take your flour and you're going to go ahead and just sprinkle it all over the onions. Once you get all your flour sprinkled in over your onion butter mixture, you're just going to cook this again also on low, medium low, until you just cook off some of that flour, that raw flour taste. It only takes about 2 minutes. And again, doing it on low temperature because you don't want to brown any of this. After you cook that for a few minutes, we're going to go ahead and start pouring in our milk. And just give it a stir as you pour it in. At this point, it can be handy to switch to a whisk to make sure that you don't get any lumps, that the flour incorporates well with the milk. Now we want to turn our heat up to high, and we want to bring this up to a boil. And then right when it comes up to a boil, it'll start to thicken, and then we want to turn the heat back down to a low or medium low, depending on how your cooktop works. This little cooktop runs very hot, so I have to do everything on low. But now I've got it up to 5. I'm going to bring this up to a boil. Well, this has thickened beautifully, and I'm just going to show you the consistency so you'll know what you're looking for. And the little lumps are not lumps, those are our onions that we had put in earlier. Well, now that we've got the consistency of our sauce just looking lovely, what we'll do is add in all the rest of our ingredients. First, I'm just going to go ahead and sprinkle the salt in, and then just twirl that all around to get that distributed through my sauce. And then we'll just go ahead and add in all the veggies and the tuna. So in goes the tuna. And I want to mention, I just added salt because this is how I remember it from my childhood. But you could definitely add a little crushed red pepper if you like a little spice, or a little black pepper. Really, any herbs and spices would work great in here. anything that you like. So we got the peas in there, and now we'll get the carrots. And if you, these were some fresh carrots that I had left over in my fridge that were cooked. But if you, to make things really quick and easy, and you have the frozen peas and carrots, that's fantastic too. Now we're just gonna twizzle this all around, and we'll get ready to plate it up. Alrighty, I've got everything mixed in, and I'm actually just gonna put this back on the heat for a minute, just to warm it up a little higher, because after I added everything in, I took a little taste. It's delicious, by the way, but it did cool off from the ingredients that I added in. Now, while that's warming up a bit, I just wanted to show you the little boats that we baked in the oven from the bread. Now, don't worry, this fella looks like he hit a little bit of a, I don't know what you say, a reef or something, or went ashore. So he's a little broken or falling on this side. But if that happens, don't worry at all. You're going to be putting this in a bowl, and you're going to be filling it, and the filling is going to overflow so that your little boat is floating in the filling as well, and no one will notice. This was generally served to us in some type of rimmed soup bowl, and usually just the one little boat in the middle. But you can also serve it on a rimmed dinner plate, and it's much easier to put two little boats. So either or will work. Now what you'll want to do is just gently loosen these toothpicks. They should come out pretty easily. I usually just give them a little twist and then pull them right out. So I filled a little right into the tuna boat, and I'll overlay a close-up picture. And then at this point you have some options. If you're serving adults, you can just pour some more right on top, and then they have that nice crunchy surprise, as they're eating this. Or what you can do before you even fill the little boat is to just make a base, your little ocean or river, on the bottom of your bowl, and then just nestle your little boat right into its ocean. Well, I cut into this, got a little bit of the boat and a little bit of everything else. Let's give it a taste. That's so good. You're going to really enjoy this. And to think it's really just made from various pantry ingredients, I highly recommend it. And if you'd like some more ideas, excuse me, that's really good. If you'd like some more ideas for pantry meals, be sure to click on this video over here. And I'll see you over there in my Texas Hill Country kitchen. Love and God bless. Okay, now I'm going to finish this.